Okay, I think I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Did everybody have a chance to look at the minutes of the last meeting? It's been moved by Amanda, second by Cal. All in favor? Minutes approved. Consent agenda. We need permission for clerk to pay insurance at time of billing, to pay utilities at time of billing, to pay utility incentives before the 25th of the month, to pay theater bills when due, and to pay payment service network bills when due.
So
Moved by David, second by Larry. All in favor? Approved. David's not here tonight. New business. Karen's not here, so we'll let Sharon go first. You're up.
Well, I talked to JR about my alley.
yeah, someone out there knocking. Sorry.
It forced under, and you know what the fence is, it forced under that fence, and I cleaned up 35 pound buckets of rock before I could even get that gate open. And then it forced mud clear over to where the faucet is, and then under that other little fence out in the grass. So, I wanted to know if they could fix it. Marty,
Do you think there's anything we can do in that alley on that street?
Yeah, what I discussed with her, obviously that's one of those heavily inclined alleys, and by washing out, it's actually crowned it in the center. I will say the fence on her place is built, I won't say precariously, but if it goes to the outside, it goes right against the vinyl. And she's put some cinder blocks there, and if we flatten it, but again, this is a maintenance thing. It will go back to what it is, but if we flatten it, at least it won't run right up against the thing.
I had some big rocks back there, but somebody's helped themselves. I don't know when, but
Yeah, it's always been a problem, even when my mom lived there. There was a few times when it was a problem.
so what did you do with it?
Just went over and shoveled it.
The neighbors are all mad because since I put the cinder blocks in, it quit raining.
Yeah, and it does. It'll wash in underneath that gate, and you cannot get it open.
Well, it washed under all of it, on the fence. And I had the cement plant guy come out, and he said they could put it like a curb and gutter, but I had to get a permit from the city.
Yeah.
We can make it better. We can't fix it. I mean, it's kind of one of those deals where the fence is built real low as long as we attempt to maintain it. You know how maintaining these really harsh alleys is when we get wet weather. But if we flatten it, we can minimize what it does.
If I put a cement wall up there, will it be illegal if it's right up at the top? It will be taller than 6 feet. Yeah.
It depends on the lay of the land. And I mean, literally what? So you're saying put a fence up on a stem wall? Or, so your grade could be lower. Let me back up. If you want to put a stem wall in there, we can lower the level of the alley that would make it where there's a 6-foot fence as long as that footing doesn't stick up more than 4 to 6 inches. That's a common way to do it, I guess.
And then you can donate if you want to.
Would it help to clean a chip seal?
But that,
A chip seal the alley?
again, the alley like
It's
this.
just wash.
So
It's too deep.
from the top, what I was just telling her as well, we try to use that larger material, but if you try to go work the whole alley, at some point it gets under it, and then all that stuff ends up in the alley. So a lot of times we work our way down the alleys trying to do that thing. You get a real gully washer, it's all in the street.
Yeah.
You can get away with it for quite a while sometimes, but
And I know the sewer, I guess those are the sewer, they're sticking out. I don't know if the trash truck runs over those or not.
and they're paid for it. It's out about that much currently. But I don't want to build that up anymore because that would just create something. Some of those just are until they get to be a problem for them. So, yeah, we can help.
We can try to do some work to it and see how much it helps.
They said I had to come here and tell you, so
That's
I'm telling you.
That's not the only place in town.
No, I know there's some other ones.
Any steep alley has problems. Even on my alley, it's flat for just a little ways, and then it goes down pretty quick. Then the next alley's even worse. There's a lot of alleys that drop fast.
Okay.
So we'll try to see what we can do a little bit of work out there in the alley.
If you're on one of those alleys, people, and I hate to draw this, but there are people on specific alleys that call me at every rain. Sometimes they actually do have a rough, sometimes they don't. But, I mean, if it's getting to a point where it's reversing, call about it. Get it on the list to relook it.
Okay. That's why I came.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Sharon.
Uh-huh.
Okay, Karen, you can have the floor next.
Hello. Okay, so probably one of the last times I saw you guys is about the farmer's market, and it all started up and, you know. So we are here today to talk to you about possibly starting up a flea market. Because that farmer's market is strictly food and crafts and, you know, and then we only have the 36 sale once a year. So, and a lot of people just have a bunch of stuff, like say somebody passes away and you have an estate. If you have this flea market, you can just come and bring the stuff down. And we were talking once a month. We do have a location indoors, so we just got that today. But we wanted to approach you guys to kind of give you a heads up, you know, that we are thinking of doing this, and if we get permission. And in the event that we might have to hold it outside, like during a nice weekend or something, or if we lose our location. So I wanted to kind of gauge what you guys all think about that.
Where's your location?
It's the old fitness center. The other half of the fitness center.
Yeah,
It's the Lions Club, VFW, and
American Legion.
they do. We're using the one half, and then the other half has been given to us
Yeah.
for now.
He has donated it since it's just sitting empty. He said somebody needs to use it, so we're going to use it.
Anybody else have any saying or concerns about the flea market?
Flea market.
Probably.
There'd probably be something with,
Wait a second, is it kind of held like this farmer's market that we have?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know for sure, because it's kind of like a garage sale. Because during the 36 sale, you don't charge taxes or have to turn in taxes.
they're supposed to.
You are? Well, nobody does it.
No. Let me check into that. I have a feeling it will be like the farmer's market where you'll have to keep track of the people that are there,
Oh,
that
and
are
we don't
selling
do that,
it.
you know.
And that has to be turned into the state. We don't do that, but I will check into any rules that you might have to follow.
Okay.
And if there's any permits that the city would have to
Just if I get the motorcycle deal this weekend, I've already got my packet that I got to hand out to all the vendors, and they have to turn in sales tax.
Yeah.
And we're not calling it a flea market per se. That's some kind of stigma with it, but we're calling it Cheyenne County Bargains Market. Something else I was going to say. What was I going to say? And it's free to come. And we're trying to put this money into people's pockets, not take it out, not charge a vendor's fee and a percentage of their sales, which I think is ridiculous, especially this, you know, with what everything's going on in everybody's lives.
So they're not charging you guys rent?
No,
You just,
no rent unless the building gets sold.
well, yeah.
But in the event that it does get sold, we were going to ask you guys about roadside park where the Veterans Memorial is going to be set up.
To do what there?
To do it there.
Over there.
To move it there in the event we
Outdoors?
need to.
Outdoors, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, if we have to. If we can't find another indoor location.
Is this going to be year-round then?
Yes.
Yes, year-round, and that's another positive
Yeah,
thing too.
We couldn't do the Veterans Memorial.
Not in front of it. Because I talked to Bill Dungan about it, and it would bring traffic to the memorial too, which he was actually excited about, believe it or not.
Probably would depend on how it was set up. If it was
Yeah.
set off to the side of it,
I can
Yeah.
talk about any kind of damage or anything, I mean, if you get a bunch of people in there.
More so use of public property or open to all. You know, when we did the farmer's market, I think this conversation is had, and what if somebody wants to do, you know, something religion-based, political-based, and you're on public property. Now, I'm not suggesting they would, but I know that was the kind of the can of worms conversation we had when we talked about the farmer's market before, is the city become the regulator for it? Because as the farmer's market, you know, it's specific what, you know, what they can do there.
Well, we
And if
would
that
have,
was specified, maybe.
we would have, like the farmer's market, a vendor's forum with rules and regulations. We're not going to say, just show up, set up, do whatever you want.
Yeah.
It will be regulated.
Do you have these written out yet, your regulations?
I started.
We started.
I was all excited about getting the place today, so,
You know, I would just say if you get those and you could send those to me, that would help me in my job to figure out what the council might need to do.
okay. Because I do know there is the rules with the food.
Mhm.
And we are open to people selling food, but then they would have to sign the same basic stuff as the farmer's market through us. It'll kind of, when I was running farmer's market, it'd be kind of same basic thing. They're responsible for their own taxes, their own booth, their own cheese, everything. We just basically provide a space. And I will keep track of who else is coming and going, like who's setting up, who's not setting up. And I did that pretty proficiency. Words are not my friend today, I apologize. But I have talked to several residents of St. Francis, and they are excited about this.
And so what all do you envision being sold?
Basically, it's just going to be like a garage sale once a month. With
Everything
multiple
from
people.
dishes to couches.
Typical flea
No
market.
couches, no couches.
It's got to be able to sit through the doors.
Yeah, no couches, no chairs.
Right.
Nothing
Chest drawers can go. You know,
Right.
like
anything that
beds,
fits through there.
No
no
beds,
beds, nothing
yeah.
like that.
And we went down to the location before we came here, and we could probably fit about anywhere from 12 to 14 vendors, and each one we even have their own plug. It is air conditioned, it is heated. I mean, what else do you guys want to know? I mean,
I guess that's it, right?
We don't
Well, I
want
think if you
anything
come up with
that-
your,
Within reason, though.
Yeah.
It's, we're going to draw the line at anything that's graphic or something like that. That's not going to happen.
yeah,
I think
we're not
when
going to
they're on that private facility,
No political.
Yeah.
as long as they meet the business regulations of the city, that's fine. I don't think that is really an issue at
Yeah,
all.
I think
They
down
sell
there,
on that premises.
and then we'll check out about whether sales tax has to actually be collected or not on that. Yeah, like you say, garage sales around town, they don't do it. Other things,
Yeah.
they do it, but we can check in on that and
Yeah.
stuff, so.
And Lila, if you do find something, will you email it to me? Because I've even tried to look, all I can find is about farmers markets. That's all I can find.
I'm sure, so I have a listserv email that I can send out to all the clerks in Kansas, and I'll just send this question out, who has flea markets in their town, and how does it work? And we'll see what we
Okay,
get
yeah, I
back.
would appreciate
What's your
it.
email? I probably
Should have it.
I know, but give it to me just in case.
It's DAMAMA, F as in Frank, REEN @yahoo.
Yeah, I do have that.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
You email
As soon as you started saying it, I went, yes, I have that.
My usual email address.
Okay.
Can I give you guys an update on bingo? Would you like to hear about that?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's getting successful. We had 25 people Saturday, which we had a lot of new people, which was great. I don't think we'll turn up profit anytime soon, but we're just trying to build up our customer base. I mean, it's-
Nobody's won Progressive yet. It's going to be 62 numbers and over $100.
Yeah, it was 102 and nobody won. We haven't had any complaints. We haven't really had any suggestions. Well, we had a couple, but I think if we can keep this going and with your guys' support, that would be greatly appreciated, because we need to get our numbers up.
Karen didn't call the right number.
I didn't call the right number, and I
That
got
was one off.
I got fined, what did I get fined, $1?
Yes.
I got fined $1, so we do fun stuff, we heckle the callers, for Steve. But, I just wanted to let you know this is working out perfectly with, everybody, so.
No, keep some of the older people from driving clear to Goodland to do bingo.
Yeah, and I
Right.
have advertised in Goodland, and Goodland Paper, and not Atwood, Birch City, McDonald, here, but, yeah.
I think we did like 5 drop-offs or something.
Yeah.
5 or 6.
Hey, good,
Good.
good.
I'm staying active, can you tell?
Good for her.
Yep, good. So, we'll just do a little bit more checking. I don't think anybody's saying that there's anything wrong with that, especially if you're gonna do it inside there, which will be good because of weather related, and
Right.
stuff. And of course, we're starting to go toward the winter months. We think we are.
Right.
We better not be 95 in December.
We're hoping to start this up next month.
So, okay.
The opposite Saturday of bingo, we don't want to try to do both the same day.
And we don't know if it for sure if it's going to be once or twice a month. It kind of
We'll see.
gauges on what all happens the first time around.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, well, thank you for your
Thank
time.
you.
Any
Okay.
others, guys?
Keep in touch.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Buddy?
One thing I can think of is just kind of like when they had that vendor fair, and we made her pay $10 to cover all the vendors. But I don't know. This is a new one on me. But I'll see what I can find out.
Okay. And we all know that nobody at garage sale charges sales tax around here. It's
No.
basically what they're having.
It's none of our business. Anyway.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's, we'd be lucky the other way. Okay, on old business, property cleanup.
So the only one I have to report on is the 118 West Emerson, and he had, I think, 2 other things on his timeline, and he has met those, so he's moving at the speed he said he would. That when he's accepted.
When did he say he was going to try to have it chewed? I went by there the other day too, and I could see where he painted some things and cleaned up some things.
He did fix the chimney.
Is this the one that Warren was talking about?
And JR and I went in it, and there was no way you could condemn that place. Place was solid.
Surprisingly so.
Solid. The bad thing on it is the roof and the soffits and stuff. Those need to be replaced, and it can be turned into a nice little house. Get the siding and soffit and roof done, there was hardly any damage inside.
So the roof, he's struggling to find anybody. I'll find out what the timeline was, but he's painted the front, repaired the chimney. I mean, he's gone quite a bit further than what he'd originally said. The timeline was replace the storm door debris pile. September 15th was to do the painting and expose studs. Like I said, the chimney's already done. That's next on the list. So the shingles were by the end of November, and I know we had suggested that may be getting a little late as far as laying asphalt shingles down. So, but anyway, he's on his timeline and a little bit more.
Anything else on project pending?
I have some input on that
This one, you want me to
later.
hold off on it?
Huh?
You want me to hold off or you-
Oh, no. I just,
Okay, let's move on to projects pending then. Do I I have not heard from Greg Kite. I'll try to email him again. He was hot and heavy on some lawsuit, I think. So that might get pushed off for another year. When was we should have a bid come in?
So I was just going to say, I did place ads in the Guerrilla Shopper, the Mile Saver, and the local newspaper again, but I put the deadline till the end to hopefully get some, and I haven't gotten any yet.
Yeah.
Oh, for the painting?
Yep.
For the painting. I know one guy's writing up a bid. I went up there and went over it with him, so.
To the potential grants that are going to be available, if we have any projects on the thing, because we're getting another amount of money to come in to divvy up. And we do, now we put caps on them at 5,000 right now. You can apply up to 5,000, but you can reapply again if your project is moving. Because it's just keeping the projects moving forward too and seeing where they're at. So I'm just throwing that out. We just had a foundation meeting, and so also we kind of briefly talked about the strategic doing meet. The forum is coming up on Tuesday, September 21st, and they were wondering, like the Empire Motel property, kind of, I mean, we had discussion about, there's going to be a new committee that's going to meet with Betty Johnson for the guest lodging, and see if they can come up with any more ideas going forward there. You know, it's kind of thrown out, is the city at a price, or, and I said, well, too, it depends on maybe what it is. I said, you know, there's tax dollars that are put into this lot and foundation money, and I said, just to hand it over to somebody, you know, you really have to consider what's going up, too. And I said, that kind of puts us in a spot that I think they're trying to generate some ideas, maybe. You know, we were approached with the one, and I think that maybe still out there, but more detail on it maybe coming forward. I don't know. That's a bigger project.
Can I see your sheet?
So, but they were just kind of coming back to, you know, like, because we haven't had any hits, really. You know, how are we marketing it, how we, you know, and it was kind of more, that committee kind of disbanded too for a while, that was working with the strategic doing, but I think they're kind of trying to come back around and see if we can get something going. So I don't know if you guys have any comments, feedback, work together with them.
I think we pretty well said that. If somebody was going to invest $1 million or more into a motel up there, that the property will probably be handed over to them. But until we find that there, but to hand over that property to one little hut that the weeds would be growing up around.
And I kind of explained that too. You know, just
it's not going to work for that.
I said that, yeah. And they're like, so that's when they come back and say, well, what price? Oh, I said, well, too, it kind of, like I say, there's a lot of tax dollars put out in this project. It was to get the lot cleaned off too, but the vision was to pass it on. But, so I guess we'll see what they come up with too, and if they have any more ideas or come to us. I'm just throwing it out there so we're kind of aware that.
I think it's a lot more about serving the community than it is price to pay. You know, even if they were at a couple $100,000, if they wanted to put up storage units, I'm not sure that makes sense. I mean, the idea was for lodging, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, and that's
I think that's more important than, okay, so what would it take to get it to do the same thing on? I think the point is it isn't for sale for that kind of thing, more or less, isn't that? Is that what you're?
Yeah, I mean, that's what.
Okay.
they're on board with that too, over there, you know, I mean, in our meeting and stuff, that's what they're kind of,
The lodging on the local level requires somebody to have the time to run it, because, you know, quite often, my business partner and I, we talked about after that last proposal, you know, what it would take to really make it work, and money-wise, would it do it? Neither one of us have the time to run it. We should, nor do we want to take the time to run it, and or to oversee someone running it. And so that's our problem.
You talking about a motel?
We're talking about grain bins that made into little overnight stays. You know, putting 7 or 8 of them up there. You know, we could make it work financially, but I don't have time to mess with that. And he certainly doesn't have time to mess with it.
so, but, anyway, the strategic doing forum is September 21st. Anybody wants?
It's in Bird City, right?
Yep, Bird City.
I sent an email.
Dara,
21st, is that Tuesday?
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yes.
And also with that strategic, I know it's not on here, and is it on our agenda? There was a meeting tonight. Did anyone go to the theater meeting? I had foundation meeting. This way's been hit, and I haven't been able to go. They were just asking to where we were at, if we were wanting to come or meet with Betty. They sent out that email to the council members, wanting to know, do you know any more, JR? You know, from
We just did, at the last meeting, I think I was pointing out that we had set in the priorities so we can get the actual estimates put in place to do the mechanical work and the restroom work. So we're still waiting on design, which they delayed for obvious reasons. You know, they pointed out construction costs were so high, you're not going to get ahead of anything, and they'd ask if they could delay till September, and they're right on track with completing that stuff. But I'm not sure where we can go till we know what it costs, I guess, specifically from the architect, and we're getting close to that. We should be getting really close to having that.
Okay.
Other than reporting that we're working on it, there isn't anything to report.
Yeah, I guess that's what they were just asking, you know, where
Okay.
it was all at, and like I said, I hadn't been to some of the meetings myself to know, and so I couldn't answer all their questions. And so I think that was as much as anything, was just having where we're at with it, because it's still on the strategic doing, and they said Betty was going to be in town again if there was something we needed to meet with them about.
And I would, if I wasn't going to be gone, I'd be happy to, somebody should probably tell her that. But it's basically down to me dealing with the architect and Miller Associates to finalize the drawings and get the estimates in place so we can decide what portion, how we want to move forward. So we're just right on the edge here.
Okay.
We should be getting there.
Can I ask you a favor to talk to Tom Keller about
Sure.
that, and to...
Larry, you're yeah, no, that's not a problem. There just isn't.
Because he's questioning where we're at. It's on the... Yes.
Well, the last thing I remember on the lodging deal, it got down to where Cobblestone was $3 million to come in. That was before the prices went up.
I was going to say, and they went quite a bit from their first estimate of 1.8 or something.
And
to
then
3.
the last I knew, talking to Tom Small and Eddie, and we was throwing things around, was that Brock was going to draw something up once that would be 12 to 20 rooms up there, 12 rooms for sure, with the possibility of adding on some more rooms. Just be a flat slab, just plain Jane, but it'd be new. I don't know what happened to it. Nobody ever followed through on it. But then the pandemic hit and stuff too and stuff, but and material costs have went up, but they are starting to come back down. They're still going to be, from what I understand, 20% higher than they were a year ago. They're going to stay 20% higher. They're going to drop down, but they're automatically going to be 20% higher. So, but I really think that's where we're going to end up with if we're going to get some kind of lodging. It's going to have to be locally funded, and the trouble is, you can't get grants for somebody else to put up a motel for an individual. You can't get them.
And I'd heard one time with that cobblestone deal that they were going to require us to have 100 rooms, and that's not correct.
No, it's just 34 rooms.
Yeah.
But you gotta put up half of it, over half of it, locally. And then they get their money back first before it's turned over to you. And by that time, they say that's a 10-year span, by that time, there's things that need to be repaired and fixed.
And then the investors have to.
And then the investors who are there, they were just thought they was going to start getting returns, having to pump more money to paint and do whatever and redo and new mattresses and new everything, you know. And so it's better off if a guy can go a different route than a chain. Those chains eat you up. They're just like anything, you know, Subway or whatever kind of chain you tie into, they eat you up.
It's going to make money.
So, yeah, I'd like to see something worked on lodging, but I think it's going to take a while yet.
Is it both of which are the grant options you were talking about? Is it
It's the Hanson
the pass-through?
Now, can we apply for that Hanson pass-through for the bench or for painting? Because that's going to be an expensive project. And maybe we should write up something for that, up to $5,000, because I see it being $8,000 or $10,000
For the
to get
painting?
that painted. And I might be shocked, it might be more than that.
I can do that.
So I would think that, yeah.
We're going to quote.
Well, I thought maybe we'd have a bid, but we got to wait until the rest of them come in. But I was hoping that we'd get some bids in. So when is that date?
Friday before the next meeting, so the 24th.
24th.
When's the deadline for these, or are they every month for a while?
Yeah, we're just getting a new amount of money to come in. We have some to give out to, but till the end of the year.
But I think we could apply for $5,000 because I know it'll be more than $5,000, and if that's the limit, that helps us. Because then we have that $2,500 from that
Yes.
seed grow company, so that gives us $7,500. Then we might not have to dig into our pot.
Yeah.
I think it's worth going after.
Okay.
If you would do that. So is anybody wanting to go be at that meeting on the 21st? Because they are talking about several different things, topics. Well, what's on the 21st? They had different spots where they were doing
Yeah,
things.
so they have different spots that you can meet with Betty Johnson, and that's what, like the theater, that's what he was wondering, the theater committee wanted to do, meet like Robert, and I think you met with her too, didn't you? Yeah. And so that's what they sent that email out for. There's the forum too, that's in the evening. But the 20th and the 21st, they have slots that if any organizations, like, there's different ones that are meeting with her.
I'm going to try to go to the meeting that evening in the last 2 or 3.
And I'm already scheduled to go to CCDC.
Yeah, since it's DC's on here. So, and I'll go to them.
I'll look at that again because that's probably makes something there work. Okay, anything else on project spending? Not, let's move on to street projects, and things are happening now.
So, before I would forget to mention, at the end of this month, they'll be pulling out for the 3 weeks. They delayed all through this month from what they was originally doing. They will be pulling out for the 3 weeks to do the KDOT work. That being said, we're still in the same plan of anything that they mill and have open, they plan on having asphalted back with at least half the amount, at least 2 or 3 inches of it, which would hold it and seal it. The asphalt supply seems to be in place to be able to do that at this point. They talked early on about that being a bit of a problem, but it should not be a problem have it in that condition by the time they pull out. We have a change order on Denison Street. Originally, the farthest north block, we were supposed to just mill 2 inches off of it and replace that back with 2 inches. There was only 2 inches there of asphalt, even though they had core sampled it. That's what that was based on, was core samples where they check it in several places. It showed anywhere from 5 to 7 inches at those cores. At almost the entire thing is 2 to 3 inches, which 3 inches comes up when you're milling for 2. So there's no base in it. The spec basically goes with a minimum of 6 inches, but for that one block, I told Tyler the city was not willing to put 6 inches in place of it. It's not a busy enough, heavy enough street that we would mill to 4, rework the base, and just put 4 inches down. He's working on that and working on the change order of that based on it being a secondary street, but I do not want to spend triple the money on the asphalt for that one block there. There's just no reason for it. So we should have that change order coming our way. I guess the issue with that is we don't have a do we do it or don't we do it, because it's already milled. Once you open that up, it's open. So the question is getting that passed through with the 4 inches. In whatever event, if the funding didn't like that because of the specification, you may in fact pull that out and we do it privately with McCormick. But there's not going to be 6 inches in that block. It's too much for that one area. We're already doing it up to that point. So that one's coming. That change order will probably be in place by the next meeting as far as what money that is, but I won't be at that meeting. I will have reviewed it and I'll be in communication with you about that at that time. Parkway Drive, they built the drainage to the specification provided by the engineer coming out of the culvert that does the drainage off of the whole area of the sale barn, veterinary clinic, and that whole large area up there. And it was under design. It literally had a 3-foot hand that looks like a sidewalk with 2 curbs coming out of the culvert. So I requested additional work to be done on that to put wings up on the sides and actually give it a chance to fan out, as opposed to digging in the dirt or putting riprap. That was one of the suggestions of the engineer, was to put riprap in it. But if you've ever watched the water come out of that culvert, it would move riprap. It would move large things in its worst case scenario. So he just provided me the estimate on that. I think Scott was there when I got it over the phone for $4,200. Now that is additional work on this project, and I did go ahead and authorize it. I requested this to be done, so I guess I'm asking you.
So do I have a motion to approve $4,200 for extra cement work up there on Parkway Drive?
So moved. Second.
Moved by David, second by Cale, all in favor. Approved.
Okay. The next thing on streets, and it isn't, I guess, what we're currently doing on streets, but what we're planning forward, Lila and I have a phone conference tomorrow with the bonding agency to issue bonds for the next project. What came up in doing this was a conversation between Tyler Hilmer and I, whereby which the original Phase B had a very small area that had half the money in it. And we had discussed at that time about doing something completely different there. Basically, it was Angle Road, and there is $470,000 in basically 3 blocks. Unjustifiable money for the area. Nobody lives on the streets. Nobody faces them. So we kind of went into rush mode to switch off of that road. We can do that off spec, meaning we can build it the way we want to, not by the standards required by CDBG to be funded, which in most cases is way overbuilt. So what we did, I went and observed other areas that have need, and we have since contacted Justine and have them verified as fundable projects. As you'll remember, with the CDBG grant, it was to serve low to moderate income people. So like Sunny Hill, you can't make any of that qualify because you can't show that it is primary access for low to moderate income folks. However, the whole central of town, as long as it's an access from the highway or a general throughway, it can be permitted. So I went and shaded a bunch of blue items on this thing. Now, some of these may not be the worst streets in town. I'm very well aware of that. But with the CDBG spec that's required, you're overbuilding them. The only place it makes sense to overbuild them is in primary accesses, truck routes, storm routes, areas that actually see the traffic. So I moved the priority off of those 3 blocks of Angle Road to College Street, from the highway all the way up to the high school. Now, that may or may not, we don't know whether we're talking about milling or overlaying yet, or whether we're remove and replace. And that's the big key to this, because there's 5 blocks there. Remove and replace, that would be a large portion of that money in and of itself. Not knowing that, I added 2 other streets. Quincy to the hospital from Highway 36. Generally in decent shape, but it's a primary storm route. It's obviously a primary route, and it is starting to break up. In the event you could get away with doing both of those as a mill and overlay, this is the one that's a little controversial in my mind, is River Street. The reason being is it's in good shape. But if you look at it, it's in good shape because it's been overlaid. If you look at some of the drop edges, they're coming apart. There's a good base there, but to me that one could be milled and overlaid. So these are extremely large areas that if you went into mill and overlay, we may get a large portion of these done. Any one of them, College being the first priority, Quincy being the second, River being the third, because of what kind of accesses they are, just depending on what we do with them, it'd be as far as how far it gets funded. Tomorrow's meeting, all we have to do is designate that we want to issue bonds to the maximum amount available, to $600,000 or whatever. I think that's what we're talking about, I presume.
Well, the last bond issue was $850.
Right. The issue, the estimate, I guess the engineer's estimate is what comes in and says what it is, but we would plan on issuing at least, because that was based on the engineer's estimate, we ended up with a 1,100,000. So anyway, we'll probably be issuing less than, hopefully less than the $600,000, because we should have more than what's required on this. And I guess that's a discussion we can have tomorrow.
And my question also on that is, since we did issue bonds in excess of what was necessary, how does this affect our grant? Are we going to get less grant funds, or can we use those bond funds for something else?
So that I don't know, because the bond issue is specific to infrastructure, and I don't think it is tied directly to, it was tied directly to the street.
It was, yeah.
It is. So we're going to need the extra money for Denison Street. We do have adders, we do have this other stuff, but it's probably not going to equal that amount. This is a good question for us to be asking tomorrow to get cleared up on that, because I don't want to get into a position of over-issuing bonds so we get all this area covered. What I'm trying to do is, while we're utilizing the CDBG funds with such stringent build specifications, that we go to the right places. And I think it's really important that you guys understand that, because there are way worse streets in town. But there's no reason to overbuild those streets to the cost that it does this. It's not going to it's not going to benefit the town in the same way it would on College, River, and possibly Spencer. Because like the 2 blocks just north of the park area and the courthouse, those 2 blocks are really going to stick out once everything else is done around them. But to do those to this specification, if you ever look at how much real estate there is on Jackson,
3 feet wide.
I want to go in there, redo the base, and probably put 3 inches on it. It's not a truck route. It's a beauty spot is what it is, and they're just way too big. If you went in there with 6 inches, you'd use 2.5 blocks worth per block of those.
Yeah.
So although those are going to be a priority to our town, they aren't part of this scenario. And the reason I use that comparison is that's why I'm angling at College and River and Quincy.
Are there areas where we could just, instead of doing so much buildup, could we use some of the funds to, can you just mill a couple inches off and then just put a nice layer over certain areas?
Exactly what is the design for First Street from the power plant to Valley is to do just that. That was the attempt at the North Denison, where they did the core samples, and the only reason they did the core samples was to see if they could do that.
And I had questioned that long before, because we just don't have that many streets other than River and College that actually have that thick of a base. They might in the center, but you go over to the curb edge, and unless they kept overlaying it, which means there's a drop-off of 4 or 6 inches on it, it's usually 2 to 3 inches deep, and you can't work with, you know...
Whose fault is that, though, when they did the core samples? Whose fault is that? The ones that did the core samples should have to stand, themselves a little bit.
And it goes right back to gathering this professional information prior to construction. It reminds me of the perched water at the pool that turned out to be a raging spring. I mean, you know, they do these tests, but then when they don't come back, it creates headaches.
So, I'm going to ask you about this tonight anyway, because I've been approached again by a couple of people. I know we have our fight with the state on our intersections on the highway. But I keep coming back, and I think that's the very first impression of our town that people see. And I was reminded about it again a couple of weeks ago, right after our last meeting. I was going to my son-in-law's house, and my drink of my cup holder literally sloshed everywhere, getting on the highway. Do we have a piece of match with the state? You know, and have it in, and maybe if we get reimbursed by them, little water. Is there anything we can do for those intersections? I guess is what I'm asking.
That would go to the court of Amanda's, where she's working with cheaters, because if you take, and that would be a question to ask them, is there any way we could seek recovery after the fact if we did something based on safety? Because that's the only reason we want to stick our foot in that one. I mean, literally, it'd be anybody would agree at the front.
I have a feeling there's a lot of people like myself who's ignorant on the fact that we're going to do all this, and that's not getting done.
Right.
And they're probably going to be, I don't know, pissed off with it, but they're probably not going to be happy. So if there's something we can do.
I would begin where we have what I would consider hopefully is a legal action as to ownership on it. That would be a question. We could go to that law firm, because we could consider, all of a sudden, yes, we have a good, they decide we have a good case about the time we commit to doing something on that property, which blows that out of the water, kind of.
Well, we kind of got in trouble on it anyway, because it started out, years ago, when they came in and scraped all the dirt off of them because they built this high, and then we bought the buffalo grass, which was, $12,000 worth of buffalo grass to help them out and do that. And then they were going to water it, and they did water it to get it started, and then they were going to mow it. Well, guess what? Who's mowing it now? And every step, they're turning it over to us, and that's exactly what they want us to do, is keep taking parts of it and turning it over, and that's why they say we own it. We don't own it. They own it, and as soon as we do one of those crossovers, they're going to say we owned it. And then we've got to pay for it all, and we'll never get reimbursed, I don't think.
I don't either. I mean,
I do not
it's the state of Kansas versus St. Francis in the event you step into it. But that's just my opinion. If the attorney, if the people representing the city say, based on safety, you can do this, and it's not committing you to something, or here's the way you do it, I couldn't agree more. But there's no way we can gain the islands, the drainage, the curb and gutter, and everything by making that one step, because it's the right thing to do.
And Scott's totally right. I mean, as soon as we do that, I'm sure the state is going to come in and say, okay, see. However, someone coming from Bird City or Atwood or Colby, they don't know this. And all it does is it looks poorly on us.
Absolutely.
It does. So, and then you look down the road there, you go into Atwood. They went in there and widened Atwood's area right down there by the convenience store on up the hill there, cement and stuff. They paid for that. You go into Norton. They redid all Norton going down through there. And then they ignore us.
The best thing that we can do is press the law firm to get to the answer on this thing. Because if we absolutely found out we had no legal standing, it would be the first priority for the city of St. Francis. In all honesty, it absolutely would be that thing you have to do right now. But it's not ours as we see it, as it is, as it's written. It's not ours.
And we basically had been convinced to do it with crossovers, and then that fell through in a hurry.
What type of a timeline do you think we're looking at that? Is there any way?
They're coming back out. I mean, yeah, I'll reach out to them again and see if there's anything we can do.
We could literally give us a 2 years down the road, still do it.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a good situation.
We figured $6,000 to $8,000 per intersection. 12 per intersection.
That's what,
Which is not out of hand for what they are. And I mean, again, monetarily, it isn't the greater issue. That is the drainage and the curb and the gutter and the frontage road. That is literally overlaid crap on top of crap. There's nothing to work with there.
yeah.
Yeah, the crossovers are not, if you could exclude the crossovers out of the issue, if you could literally say, whether you take ownership or you do the improvement on them without having any other further commitment to it, they would be the highest priority of streets in the city of St. Francis. They're not ours. And what we gain by doing something with them is what we gain.
So do we just keep contacting them, or do we get a representative? I mean, hire the guy. Which would hire, I mean, he was just looking into it, though, wasn't he? I mean, just to get us an answer? I mean, somebody to go to the state and say,
why don't we pay this attorney to come out and speak to the council or something? I mean, if they think we have a case, come tell us where we're at, come tell us what the history of doing this is. Originally I wanted to be part of hiring this firm, or at least talking to a firm. I've never had any contact with them. We have a good body of experience here that would have input to what their legal view on it is. It would be worth, we said from the beginning, it'd be worth the investment to find out where we're at. I don't know. I mean, they think we are correct, right? That's what you heard back?
Mm-hmm.
What's the next step? And I don't know.
And he was going to contact him, and I said, let me follow and get those letters, so we're not repeating ourselves. And so I got him those, and I sent a copy. I just took one picture of the blueprint.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't take some of everything. I sent one saying, this is what we have. And so I figured out.
What would it cost to just have them come out and summarize the situation and hear the history on what we have from the people who've been here while it's doing it? I mean, I don't like relaying through one attorney to the next one. When we've had representation before, be it the power or whatever, I work directly with that attorney until we get to the point that we're trying to reach. I feel a disconnect.
And I felt like we were spinning our wheels.
Absolutely.
I mean, just knowing the ones that
Right.
have the information and have done along the way.
And is he going to be the right attorney to go after it? Because, just like when we had our lawsuits back in the day, we hired certain attorneys because that's what they specialize in. I don't know if this guy specializes in that kind of stuff.
That was the indication that was
Well, that's what I thought, but if he is, then that's great, let's get to going with him. If he's not, then we need to find somebody that he says we should go with to push forward with it.
If it can make this, is this a matter that if we can't get traction, that we could take it before Marshall and Lorraine?
We put it
We
in
tried
trust
to go through,
forward to government.
yeah,
Yeah.
in the city of Brookhampton.
Villager.
Adam Smith, Benjamin copied
Yeah.
out all of Mike's
Oh, really?
correspondence back in 2019.
Yeah.
I don't remember what Dillinger come back. I mean,
Villager told us that one night. He basically said, good luck.
yeah, he did.
He basically, that's what he said. Good luck getting it done.
Well, as opposed to being a money issue, it is obviously a public safety issue.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a distraction to get that
junk before you're trying to get on the highway, or you know, you're trying to get out in front of somebody and you end up in one of those holes distracted. It's bad. It is a public safety issue. Motorcycles, even worse. That's not spilled tea, that's a...
But in my wife's little bitty van, you know, it doesn't take that. So she never goes on the highway. She goes on the old, that very too easy. My car, it's fine, I can do it, but it's still. So I don't know, people plan their routes by it now. It's just silly.
It seems like it's been on the table for a long time.
So along with what Dave was talking about, I mean, I understand there's some curb and gutter and some drainage issues, but how much of that could be taken care of just by redoing the intersection?
None of it.
None of it.
The intersection is just your access from, the frontage road is its own issue. I mean, you could, I think in almost every instance, the crossovers could be dealt with.
When you look at that curb and gutter where that drops down in, especially where that's all sunk, it's going to take quite a bit of money to go in there and rebuild those things.
The curb and gutter?
The intersections, they are in fact they're more or less their own thing, but they are part of that they say is ours, I guess, if that makes sense. If they can be excluded from the argument, and again, they should fix their property, if that's to be the case, and that's what the legal documents state it is. We should be able to force them to fix their problem.
They want to turn over the frontage road to the property owners, and that's who they took it away from. And the property owners weren't going to want it. They don't have the money to fix it either. You know, like Eddie Brunk right in front of his place, okay, it's your expense to fix it now. And each one of those that pays for in all the different places, you know, up there at Yost and down through there to St. Francis Tire, that's theirs to fix it.
So that's what you're talking about with the overlay over the overlay. Because like St. Francis Tire, you're dropping pretty good coming off that.
Yeah.
Get into it.
And, you know, that used to have gutters, not curb, on the north side. If you ever walk the horn, you'll see it in places where it peels up. And there was actually drainage that's still under there that have been overlaid over. I mean, it's just been Band-Aids on top of Band-Aids as far as the time.
Those storm drains aren't active.
Yeah, the ones across the street. So the one up by the EMS building, it actually plugged up this last time, and I actually contacted the state because there's something wrong with it. That's not our problem, but it is a problem to public safety if somebody doing 45 miles an hour in the water that deep. It did go down, but maybe it's just plugged up. But if you look down those drain things, it's pretty spooky. Those are iron-framed things that are crumbly. We don't want anything to do with that stuff on the frontage road, you know, or, you know, obviously they take care of the four-lane highway, but all that stuff associated with it, labor's condition.
So they start to cave in?
Yes, right in the frontage road between Scott and Quincy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's dropped pretty good.
So maybe this kid want to go up to the attorney's firm here before that's even a possibility.
I can imagine.
I just think we need to keep a fire lit on this because it makes us looking at.
Agreed.
Yeah, because it's been, what, over 2 years when we went down to Hayes and that
It was
was.
2019 when Mike wrote the letter. April, I think, and then he followed up with that.
How long, what's on there?
Representative in September, October, I think.
So I guess the next question would be, and Dave started talking about, is there anything we can do temporarily and get away with trying to at least smooth some of those out?
I would like to hear that from the firm that we have, because we have a history of them saying one thing, doing another, and us acquiring the maintenance on things. The history dictates that we could do one word there and gain everything. That's why I want a legal opinion before we would do that. I am not scared of the expense of the area that needs fixed for the public safety. The precedence it sets for the maintenance on they used to take care of the frontage road, the curb and gutter, the drainage, the whole thing, the mowing on both sides. It was all the state's priority, and we're down to fighting over, they're just being dogged in saying it's yours. It is not ours. None of what we have taken over is ours.
And then we filled in quite a few holes and then crossovers, but they're just filled in. They're rough. I mean, it's just flat rough. And
A lot of people are avoiding them and going all the way down to Carter Street.
yeah,
Or going down to River Street.
Either side needs something.
yeah, the furniture
In
is,
a given area, you're going to hit something. Nobody uses it. I'll do anything you say, but I would greatly caution against putting shovel to ground without a legal guidance, just because of where it's at and where they have said one thing and gone backwards on it, and I don't care about saying that. They have been very dishonest about how we've gotten to this point.
and maybe that's why we need to get him out here, because he hasn't seen the crossovers. This is attorney.
He said he's been out here, because, legal work wasn't done on the registry. He said he's been out here. But obviously, if you looked into, if you researched any of the ownership stuff. So. He says he has.
So hopefully he's taking a bunch of pictures and stuff, and then when we get ready to fight, he can go to fight for us. Because like you say, it's a safety issue, big time safety issue.
The gentleman who ran into the concrete building. The person who ran into that concrete building here will back.
That had nothing to do with it.
But I'm saying is that if they say we own it, we in fact own it, would there be any liability on the city for all that in there? You know what I'm saying? That's why I think it has to be a state thing.
I'm not quite following.
Yeah, I'm not either.
He came off of the highway because he had a seizure or something. Or are you thinking?
Well, yeah, but let's say it wasn't say it was a drug driver, or say it was someone who, I don't know this. Is there any liability that we incur? Is just what I'm asking.
I don't think so. That'd be all on the vehicle owner and himself.
Yeah. I'm understanding what you're saying. I think the best way to deal with what you're saying, the problem is that we all know is the law firm that we've secured and given the information to impress them to move. Or move on.
So does that need to be initiated by the council, or does it need to go through the attorney?
That's why
You got contact with him right now, don't you? Let's just keep that contact going, and let's keep it going as hard as we can. Because Amanda's been sending them all that information she collected all before Roger and Amanda and I went to Hague. She had all this stuff ready. We went down there, our guns loaded. And we thought we made some progress, but then what they said, you have the city attorney contact our attorney. Well, Mike tried that, and it was just a back and forth, nothing for a while, so.
I think Jared's got a point. I think it'd be a good idea to see if you'd be willing to come out and give us a status update and get a feel on kind of where we sit. But right now, I mean, we don't have a clue.
He's just from Hayes, right?
Yeah.
So,
He's been out here before doing kind of work and stuff on the registry deeds, so.
maybe if you could send him the email and see if he's going to be out here, within the next month or 6 weeks, that he would schedule in a time for us.
based on the amount of money and the liability and the safety issues, to pay him to come here specifically to speak to the body who's trying to deal with the greatest ugly issue and or safety issue that we have. I mean, David makes a really good point. All this progress going on downtown, that's going to shine a neon light all over that thing. We better be making progress in there at the same time. I mean, that's who we are by people come to town.
Okay, anything else on street projects or?
I guess I'll just, I have a complaint about 400 block of East Washington, the alley there. Is that the one that dips way down and going towards the grade school? 400 block of East Washington is what it said. Which side of it? I think it's the street between the high school and the grade school. 400?
We're in 200 right here. The pool is 300. That's the last block. So
Oh, that drops off real fast from the, yeah. I don't think you're going to do there either.
Where is this?
It's,
You come straight out from the high school, go down the alley.
Oh, that's in Washington. That'd be a College Street thing. Okay. That's off the flashing light at the College Street. Yeah.
That's what I think they're talking
Yeah.
about.
that age drops crazy too. What are they saying? Yeah. Trouble is, it drops down and then drops from the other way, so it ends up being a big old lagoon down in the middle.
Well, also, though, what they've done quick, and it looks really good. You can tell it's going to be good.
The alley and 400 block between Washington and Webster is only one of those intersections.
Between Washington and
On College. Yeah, that's the right one.
unless there's a washout in it from rain or something, I don't know what else you could do. Fill in the washout. But that's another one that you'll never hold anything on.
Across the path.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to drive through that alley in a car. Which is the longest alley set away.
Well, the trash truckers, these fuel tanks, I was there the other day when he was going through, I can't believe this thing didn't make it through that. Yeah, it's not a buildup or anything, it's just the way the alley is.
Are there any teams on Washington Street that need to be cut out?
We don't have any ramps currently, we have in the past, but there's some wide areas.
You chunks busted out here next week.
Well, eventually we're going to have some stuff done.
Which makes what you don't have done stick out that much.
And you know what, when we start this project, for the amount of money and for the amount of block we're doing, it's like, we're not getting a whole lot done, but when you look at all the trucks and all the equipment and all the men and how much cement and stuff's going on, there's a lot of work going on right now. A lot of work going on.
And a lot of people commented, they were happy to see that, the work that is being done, that they're taking it down, and, the amount of money that was spent for the project is doing work right.
What's the street up past Henderson to the north? It goes up past the low-income housing. Richard Grace, is that, or is that part of Sunny Hill addition?
No, it only is on the east side of College.
Is that in consideration at all in any of these projects?
So it's got the same problem Jackson does. It's a side street as opposed to like these ones that run, like the ones we're currently doing. It's extremely large to build it to this specification as a pad. Same problem as Jackson. Whittier, Emerson, Jackson all have that same approach. Just call it.
I just know we have ongoing issues with that one particular block.
But that there by Richard Grace, that's holding up pretty good for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sells up really good since we went in and built that.
But I think you're talking about going on further west from
just that one lot, just on the east side of the road. I guess I haven't been out there in a while. so-
That's the one we redid with the county.
Okay, I thought they still had issues. Maybe not. Maybe I missed it.
Look, I thought there was, because it's a double chip seal on the mill base.
No, yeah, it looks pretty good.
Yeah, the last time I was over there,
Never mind.
it looked good. But it was really bad there for a while, because there was one heck of a washout there. But it seems like it's holding right now, so. Okay, well, let's move on. The pool report.
I don't have anything.
Larry,
Painters are still coming in.
I think they moved to next week. I have enough people switching schedules. I'm pretty sure they're the ones who moved to next week for the people of the weather.
I should have some financial information for you after this next payroll process is getting moved, so.
Yeah, I'll give them and try to get reports and see. I really want to look at labor hours. Values next week.
Just let me know what you need.
Thank you.
The building permit.
She just added those onto the share. A little bit ago.
Oh, spot here.
No issues with anything?
Nope, I only have one pending. There's a conference. What about it? It's not a 7-foot fence. It's from the base of a step that's like 4.5 feet. So it's only, and it's up being a 3-foot fence that's up against the step. It's not a 7. If you measure it from ground to the top, it's 7 feet. The way it's utilized, it is not. However, she does point out that her neighbor has a 7-foot fence. It's kind of like, okay, there it is. I see what she's pointing out. It is built in violation of the city height code on fences. Do we want to contact? It's
You and I looked at it, I pointed it out to you when I was.
prior to this coming up. Yeah, and it's kind of like an eye roller thing. And I kind of just had to build a taller just to see if you could. So I don't know. It's not a legal location, but I don't know how impactful it is, but there it is. And now it's on permit.
Well, that's what I'm like, I don't like approving a permit when it says,
Yeah, now hers is being remotely accurate, but then she goes on to state that the neighbor has to be. Okay, then, there it is.
that was my concern, because now we start approving building permits when we got a 7-foot fence and 8-foot fence and what,
And it probably wouldn't hurt to comment on there, but who goes thumbing through permits to do their next permit? It is not a 7-foot
I keep
standalone.
some of the sun in them.
I was kidding.
Go back.
Does it actually says that on the permit?
It does, and I should correct that, because it simply isn't what she states it is.
That's why I would rather not approve a permit that says 7-foot fence that she's putting.
I'll just cross it out, I'll fix that to basically state what it is, which is, I don't know how to describe it.
I'm kind of confused that it's drop off the back street is almost right with the ground and it's
So literally, there's a 5-foot, so the steps go up to the back stoop, or whatever you call it, from the door, and it's a 5-foot drop off on this edge, so they put a 7-foot fence there, which gives you this much barrier, as opposed to just having an edge drop off there.
having a railing like.
Exactly.
Yeah. It sounds like.
That's
a railing.
literally what it is,
Most people have
it's a
one like
railing
that.
with
Yeah.
a 5-foot frame going down the side of it.
Okay, do I hear a motion to approve the building permit?
Did you have the one in there for pending your review? I scanned it in, yes.
The one is pending is Scott Warren for a chain link fence. I have not looked at it, so that would be approved pending the building.
Okay.
What's the name? Diane? D-Y-H?
I think it's, I think her real name's Diana.
Yeah. She's kind of she's okay. She's made my life easier, because she came to me while I was working on my yard, and I was weeding the alley one day. She goes, "Would you like to stop taking your trash up to, your grass clippings?" I'm like, "Wouldn't everyone?" She goes, why my compost? She goes, how about you give me all your grass clippings? I'm like, done. So I can take them over there. Yeah.
Okay, do I hear a motion to approve the building permits except for the one for Scott Warren to be looked at? Been moved by Amanda.
Second.
Second by Cale. All in favor? Approved. Superintendent report.
So not very much, because of our project stuff going on, it mostly zeroes in on streets and other things. But the boiler folks did show up this week. That's that contract we signed long ago. Hopefully resolve the issue of keeping the engines warm enough to run when needed in winter and or spring and fall. The trash receptacles are ordered. Hill Trash Service had some update on it. They probably are going to be here a significantly sooner time than what they originally thought, which I think was like 8 weeks. So I don't have a date on it, but I know that's what Billy said. I don't think he knew for sure. It just sounded like it was already going to be out. That's going to be quite a thing of switching those out on trash day and how we do that. But first we'll have to assemble them. Anyway, they should be here sooner rather than later. Checked in today with Nord Electric. That crew had gone to Louisiana for that hurricane. They think they'll be out of there in another couple of weeks. No great detriment to the city that they delay their work. It's simply an update. I wanted to know where they was at and when they might be back.
Again.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, all from Nicholas, Houston, all the way down to New Orleans again in the next couple of days.
Can I ask one question on the trash things? Sorry. I've had several people asking on the old trash cans if the city's going to sell them.
Oh, I have to.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I said, why not sell them for $20 a piece or whatever? We'd recover a part of our cost.
Yeah, why not?
Could we sell the rest on eBay?
So I have one comment about that. There are some that are in good shape, decent, workable shape, and there are some that are just complete junk that have actually come apart. So I guess I'm going to be a little cautious about that as to how many we have that are sellable. Just because there is a lot of them with bent axles, broken wheels, that we're just limping along, and they're continuing to break these until we get to that point. So I'd really rather hold off on it just because I'm not sure what we're going to have. I completely agree at selling them, but I'm not sure how many good ones we're going to have.
I think once we get down to where we know what we've got that's good and we want to sell them, we just have a one-day deal where somebody's there, you come and get one for $20, whatever we decide they're worth, and get rid of them. Because, yeah, like JR said too, we're going to keep them all anyway.
So we're going to pick them all up?
Yeah, we got to pick them all up.
And that's one of the problems that I was trying to think of, is if we had a way to get them, if you could do that at that time as opposed to hauling it down there and then hauling it back because they want it. And I'm just trying to figure out the best way to do that, because you're going to have how many acres of trash cans with a new one?
Well, could something go out that any homeowner that has one that's in good shape at their place, they can buy it?
That's what I would like to figure out, because if you could simply push it aside and put the new one there, that's a lot easier.
Because I've had several people ask too, so set a price of $20 or whatever we want to set on them, and send it out with our billing, and if you're interested in it, as soon as we get ready to swap, it's yours. You get it out of there though, because you can't use it for your trash, it for something else. And
But again, I don't want to put that out there too soon, because I want my trash can by the time it's trash day. It's in pieces, because this machine is rough on them.
Yeah,
It really is, and they're trying to be careful with it, but we lose trash cans on trash day. I mean, we don't have extra ones right now. It's not like put the wheels back on, put a Band-Aid on, and put it back in service. So, yeah, until we know.
when they arrive, yeah.
It would,
But if it wins, that's a good idea.
yeah, very
Recoup some money.
excellent.
Recoup some of the money, plus we don't have to start handling them, and where would we store all them things? It would be
know, I mean.
My problem is offering up something that looks good today, but in 4 weeks when we're actually done with it, the wheels are falling off. I'm sorry, we broke them all, we don't have any now. You said you wanted it, so.
Can you recycle that plastic? Jared's got plenty of.
I don't know, that's what I'm trying to get.
That's a lot of.
It is.
You can put in your room out of your place.
Yeah. Well, when we get a little closer, we can decide.
Where would you put it?
All I can think is the lot right next door, but you get a heavy wind, guess what? You know how they move around in the alleys, now have a,
You can fill it with concrete.
you and your ideas. Anyway, that's something I think we need to have a discussion on, but I guess I'd really be concerned with, putting the homeowners mad because during the time they decided they was gonna go ahead and buy the trash can, I got trash. Because they're going, there's a lot more gonna be busted
Wait till
out.
it's swapped out.
Yeah.
and then have that.
Or until we know we are swapping out and, we'll try to figure out something to make that we're not hauling back and forth. Justin Sherlock from Bird City called me last week in reference to Bird City. They was trying to rent a street sweeper and to be able to do some markings on the crosswalks and streets, and thought he had maybe a day's worth of work for a sweeper, couldn't find one. I told him if he figured out transportation, I would want our own operator on it, but we've always been of the mood to help Bird City and that we'd figure out a reasonable rate for hourly for the operator and the sweeper. But I would not be comfortable taking our sweeper and having someone else try to figure out how to run it. We could just go do the work and come up with a reasonable amount. And if there's rent numbers that you can pick up anywhere, and like I said, I didn't have any, shorthanded or not, he helped us. Not about Bird City, we always have, and they helped us too. So when we get that figured out, he had already talked to Yost as far as getting a little way to haul it. It's pretty specific on what you have to haul that thing on. And he had that lined up, so we'll figure out the money thing. Afterwards, I told him I didn't see any problem at all. We went over the priority streets for the phase 2. I do want to really make sure, reiterate that we're clear on why those are the priorities, and that's because of this overbuilt spec. My street is way worse than that street. Why are you doing that? Because we can build it to specification on the streets that we do. So. The last thing I had is Scott and I met with Brock on the front steps of the city office. I have not received anything. We also want the price from Brock on the pool. Both of these are pretty time sensitive because the pool, it falls off the cliff till April, and then we're too late to do anything about it. We've got the east edge we're talking about getting estimates for concrete on. The steps, our own insurance company brought it to our attention that that's a concern about, but that is it needs to be done. So I'll be contacting Brock again as to the priority of those.
And I think on these steps out here, he's not going to get to those until November. We forget it until spring. What
concerns me is it's insurance related that's brought it to our attention. So
that we cannot put anything on it.
Exactly.
Any chemicals, any of that.
I think we're honestly too late right now. Because if you don't get at least a month's cure on it prior to putting anything on it, because then to not put anything on it, then there's your other liability. We need to roll out a road on top of it. I mean, I don't know, but.
Especially a little bit later on, and we're almost there where it's going to be shaded in the afternoon, so then it doesn't clear out as fast and stuff, so.
Yeah. That being said, that's all I have on my report. I did want to remind, if I hadn't mentioned it, that I'll be gone from the 20th of September till the 4th. And this phone will be left in St. Francis.
Okay, do I hear a motion to accept and file the superintendent report?
Second.
Moved by Cale, second by Larry, all in favor. Clerk report.
I've got a couple of peddlers licenses here for the Girl Scouts. They'll be selling nuts and candy, 2 different troops. One of them is Heidi Straub. Can never pronounce her last name, Marquez. She's got a troop, and then Celeste Hayes has a troop. They're asking the council to waive the peddler's license fees. They'll be selling from September 17th, I think, till October 21st. This one has a date of December 1st, but she wasn't really sure, but it should be October 21st. Also, we've always waived the requirement for a background check because as Girl Scout leaders, they have background checks through the Girl Scouts. It seems redundant to background check them through the city.
So do I hear a motion to approve this? Moved by Cale, second by Amanda, all in favor, approved.
And you'll see out on the share, Scott, I made you a hard copy. I've been getting emails from Kansas Municipal Insurance Trust, and they are working with Blue Cross Blue Shield to put together a group-type insurance plan. It's not a self-funded. I don't have a lot of details other than what you guys can see on this letter, but I'm just bringing it to your attention because they are moving very fast on this. There is a webinar that I will attend, and anybody else can as well, on when is it? September 22nd at 10:30 in the morning. Hopefully I'll get some more information there. But if our city qualifies, would the council like me to go ahead and ask them to provide a quote? I feel like it would be worthwhile to see what it is that they're
It's been a long
offering.
time since we had a quote from somebody else.
And I know we talked about it at budget time that we might need to look at some changes, so this might be something to look at. I really don't understand much about it at this point, but they are telling us it's a fully insured plan. It's not a self-insured type plan. So I'll get information at the webinar, and hopefully if any of you guys can attend as well, you can do that. And they said they'll deliver quotes in early October, so they're moving fast. So let's know, find out there. The ARPA funds, the Treasury has, so I told you before that I didn't think we had revenue loss, which we really didn't look to me like we did have a loss in revenue year over year from 19 to 20. But the Treasury says cities should grow by 4% every year, which is quite a bit. I don't think we ever see that much growth, but that's what they're allowing for this revenue loss. So the league came up with a spreadsheet and a calculator where I can go in and populate it with our information, and it'll show us how much the Treasury considers we had in revenue loss. I plugged in some numbers. It's looking to me like we're going to have about $50,000 of these ARPA funds that we can then just use. It's a revenue loss. We can put them back into the funds where the revenue was lost. So that's excellent because then we won't have to justify the spending of those funds, and we can use them for whatever we need to. A quick look at it, there's several funds we can't do it with any of our utility funds, although they do consider refuse and, what's the other one? Refuse and sewer are not considered enterprise funds. So those will be looked at, all the other funds that we have, the general funds, of course, and then we can put the money back in. Depending on when we do this, we might have to do a budget adjustment, a budget amendment, so that we can spend the funds. Because if we have the money there, we have to have budget authority to spend it. So we may have to do that. I'll be working with the auditors, but this is really good news because that's money that we can use however we need to, and it's not restricted. Does that make sense? I was excited about that. I should have more information at the next meeting once I've been able to look at the spreadsheet a little better. Scott and I were discussing the clerk job. We've received one application. It's in a sealed, so I don't know anything about it. But we thought it might be a really great idea to cast the net a little bit wider than locally, because it is very possible there's maybe people out there that would like to move to a smaller community who maybe currently work in a larger community. So I went ahead and advertised with the League. I advertised with CCMFOA. They have a newsletter that goes out, and I've advertised in that, just kind of casting it a little wider, see if we can get some response.
Where did you advertise locally?
In the paper and Facebook. So,
Anything in Miles City?
no. Do you think I should put it in there? I can.
44,000 people it gets to. I don't know.
Yeah, I'd say do.
Okay.
Is there a salary range that we're putting on this?
Well, we really can't do that yet. It depends on their qualifications in a lot of ways. And we've already been answered by some people in town on what.
Really?
On Facebook. One gal. So there was somebody that asked what the salary was going to be, and then one of our chief secretaries done. One of them said, well, it's going to depend on your qualifications. She should have said that is to be determined by the council. And she's right by what she said, but she shouldn't have been saying anything.
I have been asked that question, but that's exactly what I said. We don't have a set range. I don't know if we need to have a
I
set
guess maybe we
base.
should have a starting range, maybe that would help.
Have you done that in the past? Had a starting range?
No, I don't think we ever have. We just,
I didn't know.
No. When I interviewed, there wasn't
I don't
anything.
think we've ever done that. And
I think you leave it open and then you make a decision based on
Right.
qualifications.
yeah, I think if we put something out there, it might deter some people. But then, because if there would be somebody good, and they say, well, if that's all they're going to pay me, then they won't apply. But then if they apply, and then we see their capability, then we can put it where we want. So I think maybe we're better off not
I
putting
think you
anything
should get around that wording it, competitive salary.
I guess we could say, I mean, if they call in the Lila or something, we could say, or any of us here, and say it's a competitive salary with benefits.
That's huge, and I always like to make that clear to people when they call that the benefits are significant. So, yeah.
That next website, just sell items, or does it pay advertise jobs?
No, there's jobs on there.
Next
There's
one.
places that classified, and that's classified, there's a place
Okay.
there's jobs.
I don't know.
There's people to make it into, I've been telling them, you know, one post to clear house.
They have asked. I've had a couple of people come in and...
I was bored last week, so.
Okay, and then the other thing that I just wanted to talk a little bit about, because COVID's not going anywhere. In the February meeting, you all had decided to extend the COVID sick leave to the employees, and you would review it in September. So it's September. At that time, you had said it would go through the end of September and then be reevaluated. So I'm just asking the council to think about this, maybe not make a decision tonight, but we will have to at the next meeting, whether or not you want to extend that to the employees, or what. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what the right thing to do is. It's not going away. We've had a couple of people that have used it, needed to use it.
What are the details of it again?
It was 80 hours of COVID sick. It was sick leave that they did not have to use out of their own sick leave, and it was extended to the part-time people, like our theater employees who don't have sick leave because they're part-time.
So that they got tested and tested positive, and/or they were required to quarantine.
Yes.
from the health department.
They have to have a letter from the health department that says they are having to quarantine.
At this point, how could you not say if you have a positive test that you would still have the COVID leave? If you go get tested and you have it, and still the recommendation is to quarantine, how would you not just extend that? You prove you got it, you're supposed to quarantine by the
Yeah,
guidance.
there's really no way to game that system, is there?
No, not with the positive test. If you're positive, you stay home.
Hey,
chances of
Of course,
people
probably is a
getting...
way to do fraud, but I'm sure everybody would know about it here.
I got a vax card, and I wasn't vaccinated, see?
See, that works.
And, once they've used the time that's the 80 hours, then it would, because this could happen repeatedly. It could happen, even people who are vaccinated have to quarantine and get sick in quarantine. So, it's just, I just don't see it ending. But I guess my feeling on it is we offered it, and some of our employees did use it, and it seems kind of unfair to me to just say, well, we're not going to offer it anymore, but that's just me.
The key to it is having a test.
Yes.
If you don't have that, specifically, if you have it, you obviously need to do what the guidelines say, and
And it's not been a burden on the city, is it? Has it?
No.
So,
Well, not for me, but I guess you'd have to say. No.
Somebody want to make a motion to extend it on the same terms as being tested and everything? And okay.
Now, what about, here's a question. So, some folks, well, I'll just use Judge Keller. She didn't get tested, but she was made to quarantine by the health department because she was a close contact to somebody who did test positive. All of us are considered essential, and the old rules was if you tested positive, if you were a close contact, but you yourself didn't test positive, you were essential, you could still go to work. I believe that is still the case for
case
us.
by case, it's changed, but the positive test is a definite.
Yes.
And I'm sorry, I shouldn't be speaking.
No, it is a positive test. It's got to be that way to start with.
Or if you were a close contact.
But if the local health department is saying you have to quarantine, that's helpful to a positive test, but just leave that one open and
You can't get COVID before the 20th. So you have to quarantine in Texas.
I mean, if the
Yeah,
health
during that
department requires it, it should be too, right?
That's kind of how I feel. Other than being essential.
Yeah, and if it's the health department and tells you you have to quarantine because you've been next to that person, that's almost they're requiring you.
Other than the city's required, considered essential workers.
Yes, and Mila has, like with Judge Keller, the city had different rules than across the street, and so she was allowed to come and hold court, just maintain 6-foot distancing. So with us being essential, I think the health department will do the modified quarantine for people like us. So we wouldn't have to use that sick leave unless we actually truly got sick. I don't know.
if somebody's test positive.
Yes.
Right, you don't want them.
No, right. Okay.
Okay, David's made the motion to your second.
How long in a year or 6 months? What?
6 months.
Maybe March, right?
Till next spring sometime, March.
So it's September.
In March.
End of March.
Okay, let's do that, 6 months. Do I hear a second? All in favor? Approved.
That's all I have.
Okay, do you hear a motion to accept and file the clerk report?
So
Moved by Amanda, second by Larry, all in favor. Council comment, David?
I have none.
Okay. Only one question. You said you had one applicant so far?
Yes.
And do we, I guess, when does it close?
Well, we put on there October 8th.
October 8th?
I think it was the 8th. Yes.
And have you looked at it yet, or?
No, it was in a sealed envelope.
Oh,
I'm
okay. You're just waiting?
mhm, for you guys to, whatever you decide to do.
He did that. They did ask if we would hire before that, and I said no. They said we had to go to October 8th, so.
That's all.
So somebody that could get another job, too, right?
I don't know.
Okay,
why.
that's
Possible.
Yeah, I was,
It's possible.
Do we know anything
All right.
here, or can we discuss?
Fair enough.
Did we make it clear on our listing that we weren't going to hire before that date?
Well, it's not clear, but it said applications would be accepted till then, and that to me implies that there's not going to be any action taken until that time.
But then we also determined that if we didn't like any of the applicants, we would just keep moving forward until we're comfortable with whoever.
We could always put, if we don't, by that time, maybe the next time we advertise, you could put that it's open till the position is filled.
Yeah.
Except,
We got a
sooner
month.
than 2030.
Less than a month now. 3 weeks for to get any more applicants. Okay, Amanda.
JR, I forgot, the county had asked me about the emergency program that had three to the east. And there's some volunteer crews coming up in the sewers on the south side of the building. Or if we could maybe open it up for which I think always go over the cedar row back there and then the tree that it's not completely dead, but
Okay, Barry? Barry? Good concert again.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate all the support, guys. Unbelievable turnout.
And look out for the motorcycle games this
Well,
weekend.
that's this weekend?
I'm more worried about the treasure.
Yeah. Some of the treasure hunt, they're looking for that next spot so bad they'll run over that person on the motorcycle. Yeah. It was last weekend, last year too, they ended up on the same day. But I haven't seen hardly anybody setting up for it. Usually, people are already set up for it this weekend. Some of them.
Yeah, but the people started roaming in about Wednesday.
Well, that's what I mean. Usually there were people starting to set up Monday, Tuesday, and getting ready for Wednesday, so. Okay, well, let's look at the bill on ordinance 1054.
It's a little rocky ordinance, this one, the other ones were, the $90 trees, yeah, they were. We did use diesel.
Okay, I think people are completely done.
No, it just started. That's just material, building. What's the amount on that? I guess I was...
16,916.
That would be the... Yep. Yeah, we'll get an invoice for planting the trees, so that's different. It's not the reason why we're adjusting this.
Is he going to be sending us invoices then for the work that he's done?
I haven't talked about that. I know I talked to you about getting us moving on the payments, so... Yes, being a contract person.
He's going to wait till he gets a bid for sidewalks.
Just trying to help you out.
Yeah.
you said you had a comment on this bill.
I would just say it seems high.
Or is it different? There's a lot of
It's all it is. That's all it is.
We're going in the hole.
So we come up with a decision on that.
I mean, just to know, like, I mean,
Which items
We have been very busy, I will say that, and they have been odd cases. I will say that. And some of them, we issued a bench warrant today on one. And so that doesn't happen very often. So, we have
We don't
to,
see anything to know how big you are, not to know if that's reasonable.
you know, the only thing I could suggest would be looking at the number of cases in years past for a year and how the bills looked for that. Could be a good way to gauge that. That's what I would recommend that we do. If you guys look at it, I can even run those reports.
Yeah, probably that'd be the best thing to do.
Purchase authorizations.
Numbers.
Because it's hard to tell just by looking.
Right.
That falls into those things. Unless you resell, you really will.
No,
That's good enough, though.
He's going to get that in 2 weeks.
Do you have any questions on any of the bills?
I don't know if that one you were talking about.
You want me to send some information out in an email just to look at? Just don't respond back, just don't reply or talk about it, but I can send you information if you want to just look at it.
Do you hear a motion to approve the bills on ordinance 1054? Moved by Amanda. Second by Cale. All in favor? Bills have been approved. Okay, do you hear a motion to adjourn? Amanda?
The good thing about signing up.
Larry seconded it.